Hello, and welcome to another Art Talk and MoCDA. This is Serena, live streaming from London, and today I'm going to talk to Daniel Ambrosi, one of the founding creators of the emerging AI art movement. In this talk, we will be exploring Daniel's most recent works, Pestilent Trump, and how to create a grand-scale 3-pass Dreamscape Detail in 125 easy steps. Enjoy the talk. Hey,
Hey
hello.
there. Sorry about that.
How you doing?
Good. Yeah, for the first time, I had to turn on my camera and microphone, and I think that screwed up the connection. But now we're here. So, ciao,
Okay, yeah.
Serena.
Ciao, Daniel. All good, yeah? I mean, how are you doing?
Pretty good. We're hunkered down in South Lake Tahoe, and on top of everything else, yesterday afternoon we had a 5.0 earthquake about 17 miles away from here. It was short but sharp and kind of
Yeah,
disconcerting. But it's
yeah.
life.
Okay, so I just put on the screen one of your work that you shared with me. But yeah, I think we can start the conversation by introducing you as an artist and also as a researcher and the work you do, and maybe we can dive into the works that we shared today.
Sounds good. Um, so where should I just start jumping in?
Yeah, of course. Yeah,
All
if you
right,
give
all
us a
right.
little intro about, you as an artist and you as a researcher in the field of
Okay.
AI.
So my artistic journey really started about 8 years ago when I had a bit of a breakthrough on the photography front, combining computers and cameras to create very large scale, vibrant panoramas. I have a background in architecture and in computer graphics, 3D graphics. So it was kind of a natural evolution, I guess. But that sort of kicked things off where I was creating these immersive landscapes
Hmm.
that I think went 2/3 of the way to creating the kind of effect that I was trying to have. They were, by all accounts, moving people not just visually but also viscerally because they had a very wide angle, vibrant, immersive feel. But what was still missing, I think, was the cognitive effect of having images that make people think. And when Google's Deep Dream came along in the summer '95, I saw the opportunity to apply that, if possible, at this large scale and create a surprise element where, from a distance, my works, when printed very large, would appear to be photorealistic, but when you got up close, you realized they weren't even close to that. They were completely hallucinogenic, or hallucinatory, rather.
Hmm.
And that to me is kind of a metaphor for how things aren't necessarily what they seem. We see the world through very limited filters, and I think it's important to have that element in these works, that it doesn't just reach you visually, but moves you viscerally and cognitively, and that's what I was trying to do. So I was really going along that way quite intensively over the last 4+ years.
Hmm.
Once I got some help from a couple of brilliant engineers who helped modify the Google's Deep Dream source code to work on very large images, which it didn't do out of the box. And I've been really exploring that deeply, still to this day, with that same source code that they ultimately gave to me. Took them about 4 months to develop that, but it's very rich, and I continue to experiment with all the different parameters and possibilities in that space, as well as the possibility of doing multi-level dreaming effects where I apply different dreaming styles at different scales in the
Hmm.
same image. So that's what I was really kind of focusing on in the last year. And then a couple things happened. I guess, in terms of the two main sort of recent artworks I wanted to talk about today, The first one was with the start of this coronavirus crisis. It brought up for me again how unfit to lead our illustrious president is. And a couple years ago, about 18 months ago, at the height of the family separation policy that his administration so cruelly enacted, I was so appalled and infuriated by that that it compelled me to create an AI sketch, if you will, that shows the true nature of Donald Trump. I'm not a political artist, but I was just so enraged. I realized that I could take his official portrait, which, let's talk about that for a second. Donald Trump's original presidential portrait,
I
which was
wanted
not
to share
official.
it here on the screen just for people to see it, but I don't seem to have a screenshot of that. I don't know if you do, but it is been posted on the Instagram page today. So we're talking about, I don't know if you want to give a description or if you would like to show it.
Yeah, you know, people could go to the URL later, but just to kind of explain where I'm coming from. Donald Trump's original presidential portrait was him leaning over a desk looking really stern as his way to kind of express that he's the new strongman president and Obama was weak. About a year and a half later, I guess, they did an official White House portrait that's in the public domain, where he's sporting a very benign, you know, benevolent smile. But I think we all know a lot better. So I chose to use that portrait. And, you know, if you'll notice in these live press briefings he's doing on a coronavirus, anytime he gets a question he doesn't like, he calls it a nasty question or an ugly question or calls the reporter the worst. He's just projecting.
Well, the
He's
question
the
doesn't
nasty
get
one.
answered at all. That's what I find with politicians. They just keep going around and around and don't give an answer, really.
But what's unique in his case is he's projecting. He's saying things about himself and putting them on someone else. And the truth is, he is incredibly nasty, ugly, and the worst. So I realize that there are certain high-level layers in Deep Dream's parameter set that are quite disturbing and creepy. They're filled with AI, insects, and reptiles and amphibians and so on. And because I can apply that to any photograph, back when that family separation thing was happening, I did sort of an AI sketch that right away you could see he's just infested with all these insects. And I posted it on Twitter and got nervous because everything else on my social media pages is all very soothing and beautiful. So after a few hours, I took it down. But with this recent crisis, I was reminded of that, and I decided, you know, I'm going to take this all the way. And a lot of his followers don't see the ugliness inside. It's hidden. So to really sort of drive that home, I used an AI-based upscaler to take that official portrait, which isn't available at very high resolution, and upscaled it by a factor of 10 times, adding detail so that it still looks like a good, sharp photo. The target was to make an 8 by 8 foot banner or print that when you walk into a gallery or wherever you see this hanging on the wall, from a distance, it just looks like a close-up portrait of this smiling Donald Trump. And the piece was kind of inspired by the famous artist Chuck Close, who paints these giant photorealistic portraits of people that when you go up to them, you realize, oh my God, it's completely made of thumbprints or something like that. Well, on this one, it's you get up close and you see that he's completely infested with these horrific creatures. Well, we're not getting together now to see things like this in the real world, so I created a video using zooming and sound effects to kind of make my point. So with all my work, if anyone wants to check it out later, it's highly detailed. These are gigantic pictures, so you'll want to look at it at least on a tablet, if not a laptop or a computer monitor.
Yeah.
And turn the sound on because there's some really interesting sound effects that occur as you zoom in. And that was that piece that sort of got my anger out for a little bit. So as the crisis continued, I could only consume information for so long, read, watch things, so on. At some point I have to express something and get something out. So I thought about, like, what can I do next that will chew up a good chunk of time, and what am I feeling I need to do next? And I created recently my second ever 3-pass Dreamscape Detail. I've got a fairly large collection of grand scale, sort of upscaled Dreamscape details that have 2 passes of dreaming styles. Trying to do 3 is really hard. It's hard to get that to work. I've only done it once before. I decided to give it another shot because NVIDIA was hosting an AI art gallery that was supposed to happen live this week. I was supposed to be installing the piece today, along with 8 other top AI artists who I was very excited to meet for the first time in person. Rafik Anadol, Mario Klingemann, Anna Riddler, Sophia Crespo, they were all slated to be there.
Sophia told me she was on one of these talks with me a few days back. So yeah, she did mention.
Yeah, I was so excited to meet. I mean, I met Sophia in Miami briefly when I met you, Serena. But all these other folks I haven't met yet, and I've been following them for years, and I was very disappointed. But they decided that they're going to try it again at the SIGGRAPH conference in July in Washington, D.C. So I thought, wow, that could be a good application for this political piece.
Right.
But then I got pushback from people in the industry that they likely won't hang it. And if they give me permission, the union workers, many of whom, well, not many, but some who are Trump supporters, may refuse to hang it, or they might destroy it or steal it. So I figured I'd better have a landscape in my back pocket. So I decided
But this is what art is about, if we're talking about political art, all art to me is political in a way, even if you are, representing a landscape, you could in a way be political about things. And there's always, your view on the world as an artist, that you're communicating to others or you're sharing with others. So it is very challenging not to do art that isn't political.
That is true. But
I guess this piece is quite obvious, it's.
Yeah, this is, I was excited about the prospect of being in the belly of the beast in Washington, D.C. before the election, with the hope that getting exposure of this piece, whether it happens at the conference or somewhere else in D.C., I've been told from people that live there that protest art is pretty hot there. Yeah. And Trump is not very well liked in the D.C. area. But we'll see if this crisis continues. That event could be canceled as well. But in any case, I went ahead and rolled up my sleeves and created my second successful three-pass Dreamscape Detail based on a geological feature in Zion National Park called Cold Canyon. I think it came out really well. And since, again, realizing that I might not be able to show it and I need something to do to chew up a bunch of time, I thought, well, maybe I can make a video that shows exactly how this thing comes together. And as I started developing it, I realized, it's about 125 steps. And when you actually start to show those one step at a time, it gets kind of hypnotic and soothing. So I found some really nice, soft acoustic guitar music to put to it. And then I titled it kind of tongue-in-cheek, how to create grand scale 3-pass Dreamscape Detail in 125 easy steps. That's a lot of steps, and it's not easy. It's my little joke, but you know, I think if you watch that again, and what you're showing there now is not the piece, Serena. That's an earlier version that just shows a single pass of dreaming. The new one is the one.
Just wanted to give a reference of the piece we were talking about.
That's the landscape, but in this particular video, which is only available on Vimeo because it's a 4K, highly detailed, 4+ minute video, not the kind of thing I can show on Instagram. I did put the link in my Instagram description of my most recent posts, but of course you have to copy and paste that because Instagram doesn't like to have links that work and take you away from their site.
True.
Thank you, Mark Zuckerberg. But,
I'm gonna paste it here in the comments as well so that people can go and see it.
Great. So the first piece you can get directly to by just typing pestilenttrump.com. You got to spell it right, but I think Serena left you guys that link as well.
Yeah, I will share it with you now.
And if you decide it's worth, if the folks in the audience decide it's worth sharing with others, sharing that URL as opposed to the longer redirected URL that goes to, which is my website /PestilentTrump, might be more effective. Just pestilenttrump.com. Get that meme out there, throw it out there, and you know, let's get other people sort of activated. The second piece, that URL, that's on Vimeo. Serena just shared it, and that's those two pieces. There's more I can talk about, but maybe I should take a breath and have a conversation.
I can ask you some questions as well. Sure. You know, talking about the Trump piece, I was quite curious to know why you chose those particular animals to show on eSpace, and why those animals, and if there's any reference to the behaviors of the animals compared to the behaviors of Trump or the society, or what's the link that, you know, brought you to create that piece, and why those specific animals rather than something else?
Yeah, I think the answer won't be quite what you're thinking. The fact is that Deep Dream has 84 different layers in its neural network, each one of which has a slightly different look. And at the highest levels, it's just starting to manipulate lines and edges. So the motif is very abstract and impressionistic. But as you get further down the neural network, it starts to resolve the things it was trained to look for. And it was trained on a large image database that included a lot of animals and people and even objects and buildings. So by the time you get down to even as early as like layer 24, you start to see these proto eyeballs, you know, emerge. And as you go further down, and it's not really totally linear, but it's roughly in this way. As you get a little further down, they start to get more animalistic and more literal. What I did with this one is, fortunately, my engineer set me up with an instance on Amazon Elastic Cloud Compute Server service up in the cloud, a very powerful server with 4 GPUs. So I can do 4 tests at a time. So I took a low-res version of that image and I tried basically all the really high-level creepy animalistic layers and just looked for the one that I felt was the most disturbing.
Right, okay, because you see, my point was that some of these animals to me felt quite cute when I was looking, you know, closer to the picture. I'm just watching through the video right now, and I was like, oh, you know, first impression, seeing Trump face, I'll be like, oh, you know, not feeling so comfortable about it, and not really appreciating it as a portrait. But then going in depth and looking close, you know, as a close up to the image, I was very intrigued by these little animal, and I found them so cute in a way. And where the music applied felt to me slightly more, not in tune with what I was seeing. So I was curious to know whether you related the animals to the behavior or
Yeah.
to the fact that you dislike, in a way, the way he's behaving, and so associating that with those kind of animals. So I was interested
Yeah.
about the behaviors, perhaps.
I didn't think about it that deeply because I quite frankly don't have the control. I can set Deep
I
Dream on a
see.
certain direction, but I can't control the details. And every layer has a mix of all the animals, and depending upon the texture and color it's dreaming upon, it may choose a mammal versus an insect or a reptile. So I can't completely control that. But what I can do is find one that's more heavily weighted towards scorpions and crustaceans and
Right.
things like that.
I see.
And that's basically the best I was able to do on that piece.
Yeah, it's quite interesting. I mean, my feeling was that when I saw it, I didn't quite like the portrait, but then looking closer to those tiny animals, I was really fascinated that so many living creatures could live within his face. I
Well,
was
guess
like,
what? They
well,
are on all of us, actually.
you could
I mean,
actually,
they say that there are 10 times as many foreign cells in and on our body than human cells, most of which we could not live without, right?
yeah,
Our microbiome, right?
yeah,
Most
that
of
we
them
don't
are
see.
most of them are in our large intestine, but
Yeah.
they make us up, but they are not us. So that's another kind of
Yeah,
metaphor that's
and it's quite interesting, in relation to the virus that we don't see,
exactly.
and we, in a way, are afraid of one another because some people may have symptoms, some people may not, and so it made me reflect a lot about what we see on our skin, what we don't, what's inside, what's outside, and the perception we have on people, because we can see Trump, but then there's so many other layers that we don't see. And, in times of self-isolation, that makes me see humans with different layers.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I was, interested in asking you that question.
Well, I hope I answered it halfway
Yeah,
decently.
no, it was interesting, yes. And for your other piece, it's quite interesting to see in contrast something that is so political, yes, in a way, and disturbing, versus something that is quite soothing, relaxing, and refreshing. So, how do you balance your creative practice and the use of AI for two pieces that are similar but different in the sense of the context and content they carry?
So, I'm way more focused, as you can tell by my library of work, on uncovering or focusing on emphasizing the beauty in this world. I think there's enough art out there that disturbs, enrages, provokes, is violent, and so on. And that has a place. I get it. It's especially visible in the contemporary art world.
Yeah.
I'm older. I understand that. I choose to focus my energy differently. So, my work, the reason it's human AI hybrid art is it starts with a lot of human effort. I travel to the most beautiful places I can find, try to keep in shape to do some fairly arduous hiking to get to these places, capture them to the best of my ability with my, photographic methods. And, it doesn't always work, but when I find a place that moves me in the ways in which I told you I try to move others, I'll go after it. And, I really rather focus my energy that way. And that's why maybe this being my first and only, and perhaps ever, political art piece makes it even that much more of a contrast and more powerful. So, I hope people enjoy that and are moved by that piece, but I hope they come around and enjoy the work that I'm mainly focused on.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And
Now there is, it's interesting. I'm actually, we didn't even talk about this, Serena, when we connected last week, because it just came up yesterday.
mm-hmm.
I'm working on a piece right now as we speak. It's actually computing on the server right now. That's kind of a blend.
Mm-hmm.
In October of 2018, I had the good fortune of being able to shoot from very high up Bryant Park in the middle of Manhattan during rush hour on a beautiful October evening as the sun was starting to set. It was kind of twilight, and it technically came out really well. It's a gigantic cityscape that I shot with my typical intention of, here's a special place. I hope to move people in the various ways I hope to move them, and shared it on social media. A person who worked in the office at the time ordered a nice large print that he hung up there, and that was that. And yesterday, I've been sort of gestating, what can I do next? I took a long walk here in the mountains, beautiful time of the year right now. And it occurred to me, wow, New York City during rush hour, that's almost like a thing of the past now. There is no rush hour anymore.
And who knows if it will be the same as we know it,
Right. So I had created that panorama photographically, but I never dreamed it. So I decided to try dreaming it with a really nice, bejeweled kind of style, one of my favorite dreaming layers that I'm working on right now. And I plan to do another one of these videos set to music where you zoom into it. And I'll probably call it something like Before the Virus. So this is kind of a very much sort of a pastoral / political piece, right? Because it has the features of what I mainly set out to do, yet is very relevant to the potential sense of loss, and the potential permanent loss of a former way of life, right? The streets are teeming with pedestrians. Everyone's emptying out of their buildings. It was shot right around 5:30 in the evening, so the offices are emptying and the streets are full, and
I actually had seen a picture of Times Square this morning on a newspaper, and there was a ballerina dancing in the middle of the street, and that was probably the first time somebody was dancing in such a populated place for once being empty, completely empty. And It was devastating and beautiful at the same time. But the question there is whether we as human will be still the same after this or different. And I believe we all be changed after what we're all experiencing. But how this will change us, we don't know. Or at least I don't think I hold an answer for that. But what I would like to ask you is, how do you see the art you're making today responding to the present times? Let's say in 10 years' time, how do you see that still communicating to the people, to the people that are born today, and maybe in 10 or 20 years' time? How do you think art will communicate to them about what we're living nowadays?
Well, I guess I'd like to separate that question or my response to that in terms of both the content of the art and how it's consumed. I do think it's likely that we'll never go back to sort of the same world. And it may be that this will devastate a lot of venues that show art. A lot of galleries may go under. Even the more forward-looking art venues, like our Tech House, that recently showed Rafiq Anadol's stuff in Chelsea Market's boiler room basement. I just got an email solicitation from them. They're asking for support, like they're in danger of going down. Now that's a wonderful, immersive digital projection way of looking at things. I long to see my own work presented that way, but that may not survive. You know, having a crowd of people milling about in a venue like that, taking in this immersive experience, may be a few and far between thing. So my hope is that hastens the development of social VR specifically for viewing art in ultra high resolution. I've been thinking about this for a while. I've developed some prototypes with some VR engineers and artists and so on. There are some real advantages to going that way over the physical world. For example, the cityscape I'm working on right now, ideally is printed 16 feet high, okay? If it's on a wall 16 feet high and you can walk right up to it, you'll be able to see the details at eye level, but not 15, 16 feet above the floor, unless you got on a step ladder.
True.
In immersive virtual reality, you can do that. You can fly up there like a hummingbird and look around and enjoy it fully, take it in completely. There's nothing stopping us from having that today, technically. It's just that the adoption curve isn't there yet.
Some of the technology and the devices may be quite expensive, but you know, maybe as a result of the current situation, those devices will become more affordable for everyone.
That's my hope. There's not, you know, I mean, the proof of concepts are there. I've made them myself. It works. So, and then when you consider the experience of a social VR, where you can go to these places with your friends, with others, have chats about the art, you know, you think about when Michelangelo's drawings came to the Met. It was only there for a short time. It was probably the most attended exhibition the Met ever staged. You couldn't get in there. It was packed. You couldn't get close up to the pieces, and if you did, you were shushed away quickly to move on because it was, you know.
You're literally pushed away. I know. I've been in those situations where you could only be a few seconds over an artwork, and then you have to keep moving, and you cannot photograph it. You cannot keep a memory of that.
Right.
So,
and a lot of the more precious works are behind glass, so there's glare issues, or there's a rope that prevents you from getting close up to it and inspecting it. And you know, all those problems go away in the immersive world, immersive VR.
But how do you see perhaps the use of a VR compared to the use of an AR, for example, or an XR, and how do you see the social aspect, you know, because a VR, it's pretty isolating in a way, still beautiful to experience, but there's an element that is missing, which is sharing with others. Or would you see different ways of sharing through VR, for example?
So that's not a problem in social VR. You can have the camaraderie and the contact and all that in a virtual germ-free way. But AR is a fabulous way to go too, you know, like, so let's set aside the issues of close proximity to people and all that. But the idea to be able to have a blank venue that through glasses you can see high resolution works, like in a space right on the wall, vibrantly lit and so on, is great. I've had the good fortune of looking at the world through the HoloLens, the first generation at least. But that has a ways to go, I think. The field of view isn't very wide. The resolutions, you know, can be lacking, but the promise is there. The promise is there. It's pretty stunning how effective it could be. So that'll come down the pike for sure.
And I assume, you know, with AR, it is limiting as well in a way, because you can only see it through your screen. So you can see an augmented reality within a physical environment, although you can only see it through your devices.
Or glasses.
Or glasses.
Right?
So it's still quite limiting in a way.
Yeah, I think it's got a lot of promise, though. All of these technologies do, and I hope if we can, if our economy is not too crushed, that this really drives things forward based on
That's
the
my
need.
hope too, because we are looking very much into contemporary digital art, and so it is needed now more than ever to have tools that you can use to exhibit and still engage with art in a virtual form, in a virtual reality form. But given that digital art, it is created in the digital realm, it is more likely, and I think it will benefit more from what the future will bring to us, specifically after what is happening right now, where I believe physical art will need to adapt to, for example, recreating the walls of a museum where you can go in there and have a VR experience and look through the works. So recreating a museum-like experience, whether with the digital art, you could build any sort of environment you want that doesn't have to be framed within a gallery or a museum environment, or not. I don't know.
Yeah,
What are
no,
your
there have
thoughts
been
about
some
that?
great advances in, well, first of all, the Google Cultural Institute, Google Arts and Culture.
Yeah.
You know about the Google Art Camera, the super high resolution scanning camera that they've given to museums all over the world and trained them how to use it.
Yeah.
So they've been going around the world digitizing the world's treasures of physical artworks at excruciating, detail. You can, and even works that have a texture to them, you see a lot of paintings that are almost 2.5D these days, especially in more recent times where people are lathering on giant globs of paint and so on. You can simulate that in 3D. It's old technology. Same thing with, what is the term they use for where they go around and scan a space, and I forget what it's called. I'm spacing on it right now. Maybe one of my computer graphics friends online could throw that up on the comments. But there are techniques out there where you can very quickly digitize the real world and to incredibly detailed and so on. So there's opportunities there too. I just had a thought. Maybe what the airlines should do, the ones, because they're not all going to survive.
Yeah.
Maybe the airlines should start investing in developing virtual travel technologies. What about that? They've got the infrastructure for getting people from point A to point B. Why not do that in the virtual world? I think it'd be a great evolution of the airline industry.
I don't know if I would sit for like 12 hours on a plane just as a simulation, though. I would happily travel simultaneously from one place to another and leave that as a virtual experience. But maybe you need also a few more elements, like, if you're going to the Bahamas, perhaps you want to feel the warmth on your skin, or you want to feel, the animals around you, So I guess.
Yeah, I think you misunderstood me. I'm not saying that you put people in a virtual plane for 12 hours. I'm saying, the goal of air travel is to get from here to there. If it takes 12 hours now, that's just because of the physical limitations. So why don't we have these airlines create these teleport machines that virtually take you there instantly, and they put all their R&D, all their capital infrastructure, all their mothballed planes are sold off for scrap, and they put their people into development of virtual travel.
So you mean like teletransporting people, perhaps?
Yeah, to virtual. Well, it's like people still want to go to places, but it's going to be a lot harder to travel if there's only like 2 airlines left, and
prices will be
Right.
way up high
So,
for people to afford to
so
travel.
yeah, for the rest of us, how about virtual travel? You know, be one way to get their business back up.
And they'll be more eco-friendly, I would
way,
believe.
way more. You've got the heat from the server farms, but that's probably a fraction of, you know, jet fuel, right?
Yeah. Okay, there's a comment here. I don't know if you want to read it or
Yeah,
comment
let's
about
see.
it.
Why don't you read it out loud,
Okay,
Serena?
sure. I think that the museum environment in digital is interesting for making it more understandable and have a better document. But we should differentiate between works that need a physical experience and others that need to be online.
Yeah, there will always be cases where it doesn't translate, or doesn't translate as well. So hopefully we come out of this still with some capacity to gather in venues and see stuff in the real world. You know, maybe we still can, but we have to limit the number of people. I don't know. I don't know what the answer is, but you know.
I think in a way there are some artworks that, you know, there's a reason why they are kept within museums, and mostly because there's a conservation reason, or because they're very fragile, they cannot be exposed to any sort of weather condition, and so it is important for those not to be exposed. But in a way you could still see them online, but of course the experience won't be the same. But for what is digitally born, I would think that finding new ways of exhibiting and engaging with art is very much needed, because, you know, currently we use social media, website, platforms, or 3D environment that we can explore, whether it is on a 2D or a 3D virtual, you know, immersive reality, or on a 2D screen. But I think there's a way to go, as you were saying, on the experience and the engagement we can reach for people to fully enjoy digital art. And I think we're literally just scratching the surface. But I do hope in the near future more and more technologies will be developed to engage with people even more. I have to say I've seen a lot of positive response from people during these times, because it brings a lot of good energy and hope that technologies can give good answers to the questions that we've been raising around digital art. And I think it will be better understood by the public, and not question anymore whether digital art it is art or not. So that's my hope of, you know, as an outcome of going out from this
Sure,
crisis.
no doubt. You know, I think that's absolutely going to be accelerated through this whole thing. Yep.
Do you want to mention briefly about the Swan Song work that you
Yeah,
mentioned to
yeah,
me as a...
absolutely. Thanks for mentioning that. So prior to all this going down, after we met in Miami in December, Serena, I spent a good 2 months developing my vision for an immersive exhibition around my work dedicated to climate change. My hope was to create an immersive experience that showed people how heartbreakingly beautiful many places are in the world, and how quickly we can lose that. What I've noticed in my last 8 years of going around to national parks and other beautiful places is I've revisited some of them, and in just a short matter of a few years, I've witnessed some serious devastation due to wildfire and beetle bark infestation and so on. And it's really developed a sense of urgency in me to go out and shoot those places, or explain to people that these places are not going to be around forever. So my hope was to do this swan song exhibition, and it's not my swan song. It's potentially humanity's swan song. So get your shit together, people. and basically create a 30-minute experience that moves people to tears. I've had some of my work do that before. I know it can happen, and I want to really like push it. And my hope was that upon exiting the venue, there are volunteers from various climate organizations ready to, sign people up so that they can start to redirect their ecological grief into action and volunteerism and whatnot. So just to get awareness out there of that, swansong.ai is the URL. Check it out. I developed a 5 or 6 minute proof of concept video. I've selected the artworks and the sequence of artworks I want to show. And I wrote up this whole piece about how the thing would work, what I'm trying to achieve, and so on. So have a look at that. Thanks for allowing me to pitch that, Serena.
No, yeah, absolutely. I found it very profound because, of course, the climate change is what, in a way, brought us here, because the virus is also being developed thanks to the fact that the temperature had risen so fast that the environment, of course, allowed it to travel within the human body. And so, we are now in danger because of that. So I've been telling a lot of people to be more sensible around the environment, but I see a lot of resistance, which I do hope now will shake a lot of minds and make people rethink that it is important to be kind to our planet, because every action has consequences. And so communicating that through art, I think, is such a noble, thing to do, and a really great experience for people to experiencing it, because it's very peaceful and it takes you into a world that it may not exist if we carry on with our actions. So I think it's very relevant to what we're living right now. So I was very keen for you to share that with us.
Thanks. Yep.
So yeah, I shared the website of yourself here is danielambrosi.com and this swansong.ai. So please go and check it out, because it's not just looking at art. I think it's a whole experience, it's a fully whole experience. And it's something that I do think we all need these days.
Thanks.
Is there anything else you'd like to share with us? Otherwise, I don't know if people have questions, please feel free.
Yeah, maybe just take some questions
to engage with us if you want. There's a few of us watching, so feel free to comment or ask questions. But yes, it's been very nice talking to you and having your insight. I think it's so important to think of art as something that has a strong message, like a political message, but also seeing that beauty under the layers of what is your first impression, and then going beyond and see what you can really experience through that connection that you build with that artwork. And also knowing your story and what you went through and what, took you through that journey. It also means that you can understand as a viewer, from an audience point of view, you can engage and understand better what you went through and how you are communicating that with us through art. So I do hope you'll get opportunities to show your works into virtual worlds or into physical worlds, who knows. But I think it was very, very refreshing and very important to share what you're doing with us today.
Well, thank you very much for having me. I really appreciate it.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for
stay healthy, everyone.
Yeah, you too. Take care and enjoy
bye-bye.
the radar around you. Take care. Bye now.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.